So I'm here with Nachum from CloudBeat, the company which brings to us automation and orchestration goodness for test and QA, but we'll come back to that a bit later. What I'm actually more interested in is a little bit your story, Nachum, and pretty soon Eran will be joining us as well. But I wanted to get started with you, in fact. So tell me, just like in a really short summary to start out with, how did you end up founding a company? What brought you from your life and career up to this point where you've chosen probably one of the most difficult paths that you can choose, right? Definitely not the path of least resistance. I'd be curious to hear a little bit about your background and how you got here.
Sure. So, I made a long way till this point, but I think probably some kind of entrepreneur spirit I probably had early on in my childhood. I grew up in Russian Georgia, and I remember, selling dollar signs printouts in a school. It was just kind of fun, but it was actually the first kind of small money, but it was nice for ice cream and stuff like this that I started to earn.
Oh, you mean like little dollar notes?
Yeah, dollar note, but so it was a good business until they switched in the shop. So I was buying it in bulks and I was selling in one by one. So, it was classical retail business.
So then somehow you figured out that in order to make dollar notes, you actually have to start a business instead.
Yeah, no, it was, it's as all great things, as it happened by incident, right? So I bought it. For me, it was just looks interesting. And I remember it probably was, it was surprised by a few cents or something. And then the kids in the school wanted to buy it from me. And they were buying one by one. So I quickly realized that if you sell it, and you buy it in stocks, then you can make a good profit. So, I was probably around 12, I would say.
Yeah.
It was my first kind of entrepreneur experience back then.
Literally started. I love it. You tried to cut to the end. You tried to just make the dollars yourself. I love that.
Yeah, the thing is, back then, obviously we had no printers at home, anything like this, and the business quickly shut down because they in the shop they switched from dollars to local Georgian currency, and nobody wanted to buy this one. So I literally ran out of stock. But it was a good experience. I think it learned me a few things.
Yeah.
And I think another good thing, which I think also teach me to workarounds. To find workarounds, which I think is very important for entrepreneur to succeed. Is when I probably was in the same more or less age of 12, 11. And I got my first computers. The only problem is that back then, if you remember, computers were connected to TV screens.
Yeah.
There were no floppy disk or anything. You were literally using your, just a cassette, the sync with the sound and was.
Yeah.
And the thing is that when we initially, my mother bought me a computer, I didn't have a compatible TV. So we had a TV, but it wasn't compatible, so I couldn't connect it. And I was so frustrated, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I had a computer, which I can't see what is on the screen. And with the computer came a basic book, so how to program basic.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I figured it out, but I figured out that you could blindly enter commands, and at the end to add a beep sound. So there was a beep command, and if it succeed, if the run was succeeds, then you will get beep at the end. And this is how I started to program. So I started programming blindly with just adding beep command at the end. So I think this is just to show kind of, I think a lot of these things are, you kind of form earlier in childhood.
So you were literally programming blind.
Yeah, this is how I started with the basic. Yeah.
Learning by Pavlov almost, like rewards, right?
Yeah. So just a few examples, and I guess throughout my career, I always had some ideas and I wanted to implement it. It took me some time to get the guts to actually start the real business.
Yeah.
And but I think you need to go with your feelings and with your guts, and and a little of believe in yourself, and this is how you get there.
Yeah. Well, I think you really, especially, I mean, I've done it myself and I've worked in a lot of startups, and I learned you have to really know why you're doing it and have a passion for it, because the, let's say the punishment you take for doing it is going to be much more. And if you have
Yeah,
doubt, then it's going to be a tough road, right? So I can imagine that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Startups is really a tough road, so I definitely not for everyone. And I think there are many ways how you can kind of make yourself right. So it's nothing wrong to be a good employee in companies, or be a great artist, or be a great journalist. So there are many ways.
Yeah.
I'm because I'm software engineering, my background, and I kind of my basic skill set is to develop software.
Yeah.
So this is it was quite natural to find myself in
Yeah.
doing startups. But yeah, it's quite a challenging road.
Especially in the software development process, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and I think it was the guy who runs the Y Combinator, the what do you call that? The incubator there. He was just
right.
a podcast with him, and he would say that an entrepreneur is a guy who signs up to get punched in the face every day. It's not a
That's
normal
so
guy.
true.
Right? It's like, who would do such a thing? But I think on the other hand, what it does is it tests you. Like you go in kind of having a good idea of what you're good at, otherwise you wouldn't do it. And then you learn what you're bad at in the
Yeah,
process. And sometimes you find out it's precisely the same thing, right? The thing you're good
yeah,
at is actually what makes
yeah.
what is your biggest challenge. And I'd be curious to hear about like a lesson you've learned. Like what's a mistake you've made or a lesson that you've had that really brought that out and really brought you further in your journey.
Oh man, if I need to count all the mistakes I made.
Just the fun ones.
Yeah, so it's you know the CloudBeat is my current company is not the first startup I'm doing. So it's probably the third I'm involved in,
Mhm.
the second that I'm founding. Um, so I think one of things you learn with the time. So whenever you are a first time entrepreneur, um, so you are basically, I would say, you are probably blind, and you are so naive, right? So you think, oh, I have this great idea, I'm going to conquer the world, and I will write a few lines of code, and everyone wants to buy it.
Yeah.
And I think you very quickly learn that reality is different, right? So writing a piece of code is really the easiest task, but it's probably not most important, right? I mean, you need to have in yourself, in your team, so many skill sets, from technical one, which is probably easy for me as an engineer, right? But much more difficult skills. You need to be a managerial skill. You need to be a good manager. You need to be a good salesman. You need to be a good leader. You need to be a good, you know, pitcher. You need to pitch everyone.
Yeah.
You need to have a lot of, patience, because you hear no so many times. I mean, you mostly hear no.
Yeah.
So you need to have enough to have enough strong spirit and a great team to carry on.
Yeah.
uh, so there are so many things, and you learn it the hard way. I mean, you always, I think, most of people's nature is to be a naive, which
Mhm.
is good, because you can be entrepreneur without being at least a little bit naive, right? Because if you are too pessimistic, then you will always find reasons why not to do things, and there are more reasons not to do than let's do it, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, you need to be naive, and keep dreaming, and keep kind of believing,
Yeah.
in order to be able to do this kind of stuff. So there are so many, I think, mistakes I did. It's hard to say particulars, right? But I think probably the most important thing I learned out is that, first of all, for every no, right, learn something new.
Yeah.
So no is not a defeat. Okay, so it's just another way to learn what to do right. Okay, and how to get next yes. So I think this is probably a very important lesson you learn with the time, right? because when you just start, you every no, it's like an end of the world, right? It's a big drama, and you think, oh, all my assumptions are gone,
Yeah.
and so on. And with the time, you learn that actually no is just a right path forward. So I think it's probably the biggest lesson you can learn as entrepreneur. Just
Yeah.
to carry on, to see why you got no, and to learn how you can get the next yes.
Yeah. There's a saying in sales that the sales begins with no, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the, basically the emphasis on the optimism is so true, because it's related to that first point, that there's so many obstacles in the way that you have to have some driving, an energy, a need to do this. Why are you doing this, right? And I did this once where I learned two things like that about the optimism. My first business plan had me breaking even after a year. And after 3 years, I realized it was going to be 7 years, And and the other part, of course, is that, when you're an entrepreneur, as you know, your days are filled with things you're not good at and things you don't like to do, because the other two things are already taken care of,
True.
So, yeah. And then, of course, that there are so many mistakes to be made that you have to try them all. You can't be making the same one over and over again,
Yeah, I think it's this is, I think, actually, when you compare enterprise, right, large companies with startups, I think startups have a privilege to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I think in large companies, because stakeholders and the structure and the management and revenue structure and all this, I think you are much less privileged to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I think it's also a great part. I mean, sometimes it's frustrating, but I think also a great part in being in startups that you can make mistakes. And sometimes, first of all, sometimes you can really have fun out of these mistakes. And also you can learn a lot. I think you can learn much more than just, doing everything by the book, which many times you find in a large enterprise.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're usually in a large enterprise, you come to take over a process from someone. And in a startup, you're there, somebody's just pointing to a piece of grass and says, put something there,
And I think also in startups, you're privileged sometimes to completely turn, 180 degrees, which you can't usually do in large enterprises, right?
Big shift.
Big shifts and big moves, and you basically just free to do whatever you want. So you are a little bit like an artist which has a blank paper, and you can start this blank paper every day over and over again, right? So you can decide what you will draw this day.
So you have a co-founder, Eran, who will join us later, but for now, while he's not here, I promise I won't tell him. How
here, by the way, if you want to.
Oh no, he's there. He's on his way. He's on his way.
No, I'm here.
Oh, I knew it as soon as
your message that I'm online. I just wouldn't want to disrupt the workflow.
Yeah, it's what they say. Your ears are burning the moment that that someone talks about you. You can feel it, right? And welcome, Eran. Just in time. We were just talking about you.
Yeah, I've been listening for quite a while now.
Oh no, forget it. So I'm curious, one thing I've known in my experience, not only with startups, but even like large successful companies like Google and Microsoft and all of these, there's never one founder. There's not one guy really. Even if there's a famous one, there's always a second one, at least a second one. And there's usually different roles being played. One person is often a little more of the risk taker, that let's try things out, let's see what happens. And the other one is a little bit more the careful one, saying, all right, but let's be careful. Let's, let's measure things. Let's watch out. Sometimes there's even a third one who's just a salesperson, that just knows people. How do you guys work together? How did you get together? And what are your roles like with each other? How do you work together?
Well, our story is actually very strange. I was CloudBeat's one of its first customers. So I'd say it's quite a unique story. I was managing a quality group in a bank in Israel, and I was looking for a solution for our test automation and continuous testing. And I was referred to Nachum and our third co-founder, Roman. He's quite shy, so he's not joining us on this call. But we were looking for a solution for test automation, and suddenly, after the demo, everything just fell into place, which was just, a perfect fit. And then we started working together for a while, about a year. And then when I left, a year and a half, and then when I left the bank, CloudBeat was at that stage in kind of I'd say a design partnership, just really experimenting, not really an actual company, but just, experimenting with all kinds of solutions. But already what I've seen was, was really amazing. So when I left the bank, I was kind of thinking what to do. And that's when I joined CloudBeat and co-founded with Nick and Roman, the official company. That was in 2018.
Wow, time
Yeah,
flies.
that's the kind of story. Yeah. So yeah. So whatever I'm selling, I actually experimented on myself. So I have a good validation for everything I say.
So you really did go from the corporate job straight into the startup world. What's that been like for you?
Well, it's odd. So, I've been working for 20 years in different enterprise companies, banks and financial services and startups as well, but more of enterprise companies. And suddenly, to be in the, you're responsible for everything. It's like, it's living instead of fulfilling other people's dreams, you're fulfilling your own. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah. I think for me, I always use the comparison. It's a little bit of for some people, it's probably not nice to hear, but I always compare it to like cooking, that you can be a really great home cook. You can even be a really great restaurant cook. But when you do a startup, you actually have to go out there and kill the pig yourself,
Right.
That's usually a lot more than what people expect. They're used to buying the nice packaged stuff from the store. Like you really have to do everything, just like you say, there's nobody there to do it for you.
Yeah, so true. So
Yeah.
true.
So that's a great transition because I'm also interested in the founding story of CloudBeat. And what you just said, Eran, is that you were a customer and what you saw just clicked. It just made sense enough for you to actually like change your life, basically. What was it about the product? What was the problem that it solved for you that was unique, that you said, this is it, this is where I need to go?
Well, the thing is, I was looking for two tiers of solution. One is really providing me a simple way to create test automation, just taking the people that I have and transforming them from manual testers to test automation experts. Okay. And I didn't want to do it with a dummies tool, but really a tool that can, evaluates the way that people work and, and really helps them to proceed with test automation. That was the first tier. The second tier, I was looking for something to manage everything, to have a managerial view. That's for my personal use, to know how many tests were executed, where are problems, where are the root cause analysis of our problems. And when I went CloudBeat, suddenly I saw that they actually solved both problems. So the first problem was, of course, solved by our open source tool, Oxygen. And the second tier is solved by the CloudBeat. I'm sure we'll be talking about the product itself, but and suddenly everything just fell into place and was very, very clear to me that there's no doubt about it. This is what we need. Yeah.
Right. So just for context, that the CloudBeat tool is a tool for automating software testing, right? So you have your developers developing software. They need to now finally actually check that it actually works. And what your product does is automate that, but also scale it up so you can do thousands of tests, much more than what you would do individually by hand.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's great. And so
maybe if I can add on top of it, let's for a moment just put the technical side aside. But I think also, because I know Eran also from before, so I think Eran was always a human person, right? So I mean, I remember that when I work with a couple of other customers and they all knew Eran. So Eran was kind of a center of excellence. There were many QA managers in Israel coming up to see what he did in his organization. And I think one of great things about Eran that his passion was actually, to present, to kind of, make other people stronger, right? To transform his knowledge to others. And I think, at least for me, as a match was that, it's very important in startups, right? That, you want to spread your wings. And I think it's probably, being able to pitch people and, it's not just a pitch to sell. I think we really have a unique DNA that we really help people,
yeah.
I think that's very important. So, because you don't build startup just to sell and just okay, here's a product, we sell it to you and that's all. So it's all really about to solving the problem and really being helpful, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is a great this is a great passion in Iran, to being helpful, to be able to help people, to kind of present them the solution right for their needs. And I think we can see it greatly here in this transformation from enterprise. So what I'm just trying to say, sometimes when you work in enterprise, you have something in you which is kind of hidden, right? But you might feel it, but you not necessarily have the right platform in enterprise for it to develop. And then suddenly when you have an opportunity, you can spread your wings.
Yeah.
And
it's like a muscle.
I think this is great.
You have to
Yeah, I
execute
think it's a great
muscle.
example here with Eran and the transformations that he made from enterprise to startup.
Yeah, and actually it's an important point, because in the end, what we forget easily is that business is all about trust. That's all it is. So, if
Yeah.
you don't trust someone, you don't do business with them, and vice versa. When you trust them, you find ways to do business with them. Yeah, even sales itself, it's a theme that has come up with other discussions, and what we talk about. Sales is easy to get a bad rap because everybody's seen it done badly before. But when it's done well, it's a person you trust who can guide you in an expertise that you can't have, and I think
True.
Not only that you guys are doing that for your customers, but in fact, you're providing software for people who will do that for their customers.
Yeah, true.
Great.
True. I think especially in startups, the personal touch, it's always important, but in startups, the personal touch and the trust. And I would say, the professional trust, not just, oh, you are a nice guy, so I trust you, but also professional trust that, okay, this guy knows what he says and what he's doing and he can really help me, is super important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I've worked with you guys as well, so I know exactly what you're talking about. it's very important. So I'm curious also, when you find a unique problem to solve and you start a company for it, one of the first questions you get from a potential investor, for instance, is, well, why hasn't someone else done it? Right? You can say, well, there's nobody doing it, so we're going to do it. Okay, but why didn't anyone else do it? What do you suppose has been the barrier in the past for someone else to come through with this sort of automation and like this type of platform that you guys do? Why was this the time?
Well, I think it's you are touching some pain points that I think many startups have, because there are basically I would say there are probably two types of startups, right? There are some startups that have very unique technological I almost like algorithm or something, say Google, right? They developed some unique search mechanism, right? Which was very unique to them. And it was so much different from what other platforms have. And then there is another type of startups, which I think there are founders who coming with their experience, with their know-how, okay? And they just know from their experience that there is a problem which is unsolved. And I think we are the second type of startup. So we've been in this industry for more than 20 years, and we brought all our experience of how to do it, what's the best way to do the testing on large scale and the DevOps and all the technical stuff, and we implemented it in our platform. And while we have some also unique technical mechanism, I think this platform unifies a lot of very unique experience that we have. And I think this is one of things why our customers like us, because we really solve them the problem that many people from outside don't understand. When you are experienced in some fields, there are some issues which you can understand if you are not sitting in this every day, right? And one of my recent hobbies is airplanes, right? And when you are just a passenger in an airplane, right? So it seems quite easy and simple. Oh, you take off, you fly, you land, that's all, right? And when you get into it, you realize how many parameters are there and how strong skills and how many things a pilot needs to have in his mind to be able to fly the aircraft. and it's far from being simple. And the same I think is here. When you are in some niche field, some particular field or some particular problem that you are solving, especially if you are in B2B business, then it really comes to your experience and to very specifics of the problem you're solving. And I think we are very unique in this field because I think there are many startups are built on base of some problem which somebody personally encountered. Not necessarily he's expert in this field, and he said, "Okay, I'm going to try to solve it." We also have the experience, the base of experience doing it, and I think this is kind of our unique value for both for investors who invested, and of course for our customers, which is the most important because we are here to help companies and people, individuals, to solve their testing and development problems.
Yeah. No, first and foremost, you solve the problem for yourself, right? That's
Yeah.
the best kind of startup.
Yeah, true.
And
True.
there's nothing more complex than simplicity. That's the other takeaway.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah. And Eran, I think you have the most contact with customers. How do you see that for them? What's been your experience there?
Well, I think the pains that quality assurance and automation has caused or are trying to solve are immense. And the thing is that it's a market that is in transition. There's two huge change factors now in software development. One is the DevOps revolution that really changed the way we produce code. The second was, of course, using agile.
Yeah.
And both have managed to change. Agile methodology, just for someone who doesn't know, agile means just producing code or actually developing code in a very unique manner where you have small teams developing on small sprints of code and then just shipping that out every 2 weeks, which is a kind of a revolution because previously you used to just produce code once a few months. Now, you add these two factors in where you have a total, I'd say a total assembly line of coding through DevOps, and then everything is shipped very, very quickly, has caused a huge pain in quality assurance because suddenly, instead of having 3 months to check something and you can just, ship it and just develop it, suddenly you need to do everything very, very rapidly. And that's what we see. We see a lot of changes in these two factors that caused a lot of disruption in the way people are doing their test automation. This is where we try and solve it by adding a factor called TestOps or continuous testing.
Yeah.
This is where we say, okay, there is DevOps, but there is also TestOps because DevOps does not work without TestOps. It's just another link in the chain that is just as important as any other links in that chain. And what we see is this link is usually the weakest link, and that's where there's so much pain there.
Yeah, and I guess that's the story of all of us in IT, that people don't know we exist until something goes wrong. It's like the guy who organizes the trains. When as long as everything's working right, you don't exist. But when it's going wrong, suddenly you're the most important guy. And I think you guys are right in right at the heart of that. Your customers as well. So that's really important.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so hard to appreciate or understand how quality and testing is important until you actually screw up, right? Until something happened to you in production, and the bigger company you are, or more customers are being impacted, suddenly you get it into your face and you realize,
Yeah.
I probably need to pay attention to this.
Yep. No quicker way to learn than pain, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
And speaking of things not working, I guess it's like the cliche question now. How has this whole COVID thing impacted your business? Not only your own company or your customers' companies, but how has it also impacted how you're doing business and how things are going with you guys?
Yeah, I think in coronavirus time, probably it's most companies need just to reinvent themselves, and reinvent themselves not necessary to shift your product, but it's how you sell, how you price things, how you package you're offering. And I think it's, while it's quite a challenging time, I think for many startups, I think it's a great time to get yourself rethinking everything and really optimize and take yourself to the next level. I think it's a great kind of power injection into company to which pushes you forward, right? Because you have no time to relax and think, oh wait, it looks good, let me just chill out, right? So I think it makes us think and work twice as hard as before. We already see a great positive impact of strategies we've been changing and product focus we've been changing for last few months. I think we made a great also online marketing effort, also with your help, guys, and basically understanding things, or kind of opening up our eyes on things that we've been either just saying, oh, that's okay, it can wait, or we haven't been watching it closely before. So while I think it's a tough time for many of us, I think I've seen it as a kind of empowering period, and I believe we will get much stronger out of it. And definitely we start personally in CloudBeat, we start to see already a positive impact on the company in a way, a new verticals that we reaching, a new kind of company types we are reaching, suddenly a new product perspective we're seeing. So I think it's we will get out of it much stronger as a company, I think, with probably also much stronger offering and with new customer sets which we probably haven't been thinking before to reach out. So
that's, I mean, I think it's shifting everyone. We used to talk about all what was possible, and now we talk about what's actually important, right? That seems to be the shift in focus.
I think this is a great point, Lee. I think we've suddenly throw away everything which we thought is important, but it's not really. And I think it's a great momentum to really be so much focused on what's really important, what's really makes the bottom line. And it's not just bottom line from sales perspective. I think it's a bottom line also from your impact as a company, right? Your values, why you do it, what you do it, and how your customers are really benefiting from it.
And Eran, have you seen the same kind of thing with the customers that you're working with, that you're coming in contact with?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I've noticed is that you could actually, that people are more approachable for two reasons. The first reason, I think they're at home. And suddenly, all this garbage time, coffee breaks, and all of that has just gone away. And suddenly they're just working. You just have a one-on-one conversation with anyone.
Just like us.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. The other thing is people, are now less tend to be biased to geographical distances. So I can talk to anyone, anywhere in the world, and it's just the same way as I've been talking to someone, living 6 blocks away. So suddenly, I can reach someone in Idaho or in Australia. It doesn't really matter, because he or she knows that it doesn't matter if I'm talking to him, 6,000 miles away or 6 blocks away. They still have the same effect. I can't really come to his company to help him, and he'll have to build the whole mechanism for me to work with him remote. And in that way, I think it's an amazing transformation. And that certainly has benefited us. But COVID is difficult.
And I think, probably what we all have in common is that we've worked remotely most of our careers for different reasons. And now we're seeing that even our customers are used to this now. They even now want to work remote, and it's really increases your reach, like for better and worse. In the old days when I had to drive to visit a customer, I could see maybe 2 in a day. And now I can see like 7 or 8 of them. And, that's a double-edged sword, but it's certainly effective. And I want to point out something I really love, Eran, is that your background on Zoom right now is an exact photo of your real office. So it's like, it's almost like you haven't gone anywhere. You really miss it, don't you?
I'm actually in the office right now, so I'm just using the virtual background, but if I remove it, you'll see it's the same office.
The same thing.
I'm sitting just here.
That's great. That's another thing we all have in common with Zoom.
So you don't know if the world is real or virtual. It's just the same thing now. So I am sitting in this office, but using a virtual background of the office.
So poetic, so appropriate.
Yeah, it's we're living in funny time when I think the Inception movies is suddenly much more relevant. All right, sometimes you can't really distinguish if you are within the dream, or you are actually awake.
I found movies got boring because the plot and the news is more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one more question I have about the business itself, and then I'll kind of close out with some things to think about. I'm interested in you're basically running an open source business, right? Your core product is an open source framework.
Correct.
How is that different than selling an actual product or a license? I think there's a lot of implications that aren't obvious until you've actually been in that business. What's that like?
Yeah, I mean, being in open source business is like walking on very thin edge. It's like walking on the edge. It reminds me, by the way, another movie about the French guy who walked in between two twin towers in New York, right? So it's almost like walking on a thin rope, which is just between two skyscrapers. Because the reason why is because the open source, I think the open source model in its core is of course is associated with a free, right? While I think the core of open source wasn't about free, it was more about collaboration, right? That you can actually share the pieces of code, you can collaborate, you can learn from each other. Still, I think in many organizations, the perception is that, first of all, it's free.
Yeah.
And of course, for commercial organization, it's a challenging to cross this barrier, okay? Because, I mean, we build the core of our business as open source, first of all, because of our beliefs, right? Because, in testing, there are many great tools and frameworks which are open source, like Selenium, Appium, and name few, right? So we are big believers in open source and collaboration and sharing, and this is why we build also one of our core product is open source and free, and we invested great amount of time in documentation and then within the code commands and so on, because we wanted to make our code shareable and actually to share experience with our colleagues. On the other side, we're still a commercial company, and everyone wants to bring salary at the end of the month, and so I think this is challenging to kind of keeping it open source on one side, and on the other side still being able to bring a financial model which makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think this is the most challenging part. This is why I'm saying it's like walking on the edge, because if you are becoming too much commercial, right, then suddenly you are open source, so it's kind of people see it in kind of coming in contrast. On the other side, if you are too loose on the open source sides, and how you make money. So I think we've been unique in this sense that we build the core product as open source, and then we build a reporting analytical solution which is a commercial part on top of it. So I think this unique combination allowed us kind of combine on one side really to be able to collaborate and share and contribute. And the most important part, right, which is an engine, a testing engine, and how we do things. Mm-hmm. On the other side, to keep ourselves some part of our SaaS product and being able to charge money on it and eventually make some profit on it. And I think this is a great combination which allows us to be both kind of sides, right? Earn money and be collaborative, being supporting and contributing.
Yeah.
And we closely watching our other colleagues and so many open source great companies, like Elastic and many other companies which base their product on open source. And I think it's an ongoing challenge that especially now in coronavirus time, becoming stronger and stronger. But I must say that also in coronavirus time, I think if you have some of your product open source, it's actually a great sale point as well. So we can say that even so we had some initially tough time, you know, to build the right model. I think now in coronavirus time, it's actually helping us because it makes much easier, you know, for organization to decide taking something which has, you know, zero cost initially, and then decide, you know, if it brings in value, they can then, you know, grow up together with us and purchase some, you know, slightly bigger commercial license and so on.
Yeah. No, that's true. I always think of, I'm full of the food analogies because I love to eat, but that to me, open source is like fish, you know, that in a way the ocean has, it's full of free fish, but somebody has to go get it, you know, and bring it back and do all the thing. And I think that's the purpose of an open source business. But the benefits for customers are really straightforward. For number one, you're not selling a product and walking away. In order for you to have a business, they actually have to use it. So you actually have to provide something of value, and that's good for customers. And secondly, I guess you have a theoretically infinite development team, you know, depending on how big the community gets. You can have all of those brains working on your product.
Right.
So yeah, it's really great. And then as you say, right, it's a low entry point for a customer. You know, you can just download the open source. Has that been helpful to like get them up and running on the open source version? Yeah,
it's as you said, it's a great entry point. I think, you know, if we look at the open source kind of commercial open source project, right? So I think because they're open source, they gave probably more trust. It's kind of building initial trust with the customer, and B, definitely an entry point, which is easy. Just, you know, take it, try it, use it, you know, no obligations. So I think it's definitely two things which basically build a relationship between the company, which basically is behind the open source project, and the end user. Again, and I think eventually, you know, the idea is, I think every open source project which is commercial, you know, anything from Red Hat Linux, right, to Elastic and so many other great projects, is that, you know, once you really benefit on large scale in an organization, so, you know, you can also contribute your part and you know, pay something and share and you know, and bring all this goodness back to the community.
Yeah, that's great. So one thing that's clear is, you know, the value for a QA engineer, you know, the people that actually use the product. But I'd be interested to hear, you know, in the interest of time, you know, in a very short way, if I'm the CEO of the company, or, you know, a product owner, or somebody who's maybe not suffering day to day with quality issues, but it has a direct interest, what should they be thinking about? What should they be asking themselves in this regard? You know, what is the value that CloudBeat brings to them?
Well, I think, you know, when you are top management, right? So you basically have two concerns, right? First of all, are your customers happy with the product you're offering, right? And B, I think, you know, what are basically your cost of development and cost of supporting this superior quality, right? So I think what we as a CloudBeat, as a platform offering is basically a relief in sense of being able to, you know, go sleep to your bed and knowing that the product you have in production has a superior quality, and you can actually, you know, sleep well and not think about, oh, you know, will I have a production issues? Did I deliver the version too fast, right? Was you know, my agile cycle too short, or did I push too many? There are so many concerns on both on product level and CEO level, you know, with this crazy you know, release cycles, and this really, you know, I think most of software companies today are pushed to their edges, especially in coronavirus time when we need to push versions so often and so fast. And so I think with our intelligence AI-based platform, we really kind of give you assurance that, you know, your product is okay, and we can uncover, you know, defects and uncover different stability issues so much earlier in the cycle. So, you know, you can handle them earlier and you don't need to get to production and figure them out there. And on the other side, I think from value proposition, I think we probably have one of the best value proposition, which means, you know, you can really save money, okay? Yeah. Because, you know, many times companies, even if they take open source free solution, it's just, you know, eventually end up costing you more people, you know, more uncertainty, because uncertainty also costs money. And of course, if you end up being with your defects in production, it's cost you huge amount of money. So I think we have this good combination, which we really see is appreciated by our customers. So, we let them really sleep well at night, and we can constantly show them the ROIs that whatever they pay, it makes sense, and it saves them money, and it makes them coming up with much stronger product.
Quality and time to market, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's great. Any thoughts, Eran, on that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we try and do, and I think is quite unique, is to not force ourselves on the customer's solution. And I think that's being done too much. So a customer usually would have to buy a whole tool chain or a certain solution, and to actually do a transition to that specific tool chain. What we do differently is we say, okay, we accept the fact that each company has its own tool sets and all, the way they do things. And what we try and do is to actually add a layer of quality integration or software or continuous testing over whatever they have. So if they have their own CI/CD tool, Jenkins or whatever that is, or they're using this test automation tool or another, they can simply just integrate our tools very seamlessly. And I think that's the amazing thing. That's the really secret sauce about what we're doing, is to try and take this company and seamlessly transition it to continuous testing without changing the whole procedures and throwing things away, but rather using exactly what they already have. And I think that's really been our contribution to the way things are doing now in continuous testing. The other is really taking things that are tried to do, people would do them for many, many months to create continuous testing by themselves and a kind of a DIY solution. And rather doing that, just giving them a solution which will in a few days enable them to start working on continuous testing, running parallel test cases, thousands of test cases on hundreds of mobile devices or browsers without trying to build a whole infrastructure will take them a year to build.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's the value proposition that we're offering.
That's fantastic.
Seamlessness and quick of implementation.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. And of course, this particular conversation was really to get to know you guys, but on your YouTube channels, you have a lot of really great demos that go in depth and really show the product. So I think we'll have some follow-up conversations on that topic as well. But this has been great. I really appreciate it. It's good to get to know a little bit about you guys, your background, how CloudBeat came to be. I've loved working with you guys. So this has been a lot of fun. Hopefully it was great for you guys. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Luis. Thanks for the opportunity. It was great chat. And let's continue, do great things. And, hopefully we'll get stronger out of whole, coronavirus stuff together.
Absolutely. No doubt. All right. Thanks a lot, guys.